wherever you end up, if you travel, you go to forlorn towns or distant towns, Chapel Hill, for example, many other towns. If you play rugby, you'll always find a rugby club, no matter where you are in the world. And if you can find that rugby club, you will have 20, 30 friends immediately. It doesn't matter how good or bad you are as a player, you will always have friends anywhere in the world if you play rugby.
You said you started up. What's the story behind the startup?
So the startup all revolved around this one guy named Parv who contacted me through email. He was in my year and he knew I was from England and that I'd played rugby. And he asked me to put on a short coaching session for International Day. So I told my dad about it and he was interested in helping me out and working together. And he got his women's rugby team that he was coaching, some of the UNC guys, to come on and put this clinic. At the clinic, it went really well. People really took to it. There was a lot of excitement and questions. I think it helped all the football players signed up to do it because they thought it looked like fun. I believe at the end of that day, Jackson Paterno asked my dad to start the team. And from there, we kind of, the snowball effect, and now we're sitting here 10 years later.
At the time, it was just a club. Robert Joseph came in and ran a kind of Scottish culture booth at Diversity Day. And some of the guys thought it looked really, really cool. There was a group of seniors. Some of them didn't end up playing. Max Shafir was one of them. There were a few others. Once I found out Jeff Hoffman, who's a good friend of mine, was going to play, and a good friend named Lucas Stevens, who was a wrestler, was going to play too. And that's what got me really interested in it.
So we moved here in 2002, and I'd been coaching rugby in England, and Ian and Graham had been playing, and there was no high school rugby in the area. And when Ian was a freshman in high school, I think I guess it was 10 years ago, it was in the fall of 2003, they had an international day at school, and one of Ian's friends asked him to organise a rugby demo. I was coaching Eno River women's rugby at the time, and so I brought the women's team along, and I also got the UNC men's rugby team to come along and do a rugby demonstration. And that's what really kicked it off. Ian was there, Jackson Paterno was there, he'd been playing rugby in Brussels, and they came up to me afterwards and said, we want to start a rugby team. That was early in November 2003, and we had our first practice a couple of weeks later, and that was the formation of the Highlanders.
That crazy chant that we do before games was actually something that I learned at Minnesota football camp, of all places. And there was one of Minnesota's assistant coaches, so this would have been the year 2000. He had this thing he would do with the Minnesota football players in practice to get them hyped up. And I just remember it being 7 in the morning in Minnesota in July, and I'm 12, and I've never been more excited and just wanted to rip someone's head off. So if it can do that to a 12-year-old, in a stinking hot July day, it's pretty cool. So we were in their indoor practice facility, and he was running around, doing that chant that everybody knows. And I never forgot it. And we never did it with football because we had all sorts of other kind of more like hip hop inspired stuff that guys would do before games. But then when we had a chance, that was what was so cool about the Islanders, was we could kind of make all the traditions and form everything, you know, the name, the colors, all that kind of stuff. So I just did that before, I guess, the first game, and we loved it. I mean, it could have flopped. Like, if people don't go along with it, it looks pretty dumb, one guy doing all that. But, you know, Tony Gualtieri kind of picked up the torch when I left, and he was kind of the most insane nay leader ever.
I mean, it's a thread that's been with the club since year one, and it's really interesting at the start of the season watching the guys who are now becoming the seniors teaching the younger guys about it and explaining it and seeing them adapt it. And I think it symbolises that kind of connection and being together as a team.
I mean, the fact that people are still 10 years later doing that is pretty cool. There's a lot of the traditions have really stuck. One that didn't stick was my original, I had just seen the movie The Gangs of New York, and my original suggestion for the name was the Dead Rabbits. And Robert Joseph said that whatever we came up with, he would use, and then we came up with that, and he was like, no, guys, I'm not being the head coach of the Dead Rabbits. So he made us think of another name.
I remember right back in our first season 2004, we did have a mascot. The mascot was it looked like some sort of dead rodent, and it's actually on one of the T-shirts, on the back of the T-shirt there's a photograph of Kyle O'Brien carrying this thing. And so yeah, there was a lot of creative people on the team back then, and I guess that was one of their things.
Yeah, so the first year we actually had this. This is the original jerseys that we had. So we just had this normal like first 15, and we were trying to decide what we were going to do for the second year, because obviously it would be kind of dumb to just keep doing like first 15 on it. So I came up with it, and you know, we were the Highlanders, so I wanted to put like a crest on there or something, and I kind of was looking at some stuff online and came up with the shields and put the swords in, and I kind of took a lot of different pieces from different stuff. And one thing that was kind of cool on it, the lettering that we do, and I think they kind of use it in some other stuff that they have now, it's actually a blend between a couple different things. So the lettering actually is like my own type of font, so I guess you can call it the Highlanders font if you want. So that's kind of, it's actually, I kind of made it up, so that's pretty cool for the Highlanders.
I attribute the name Highlanders whenever I'm asked to Sean Blanchard. I don't know if that really is the true story, but I think Sean picked the name. He had a real kind of fascination for stuff Celtic, you know, Irish, Scottish, the history and everything else. People often assume it's that I picked it because I'm Scottish, but actually that's not the case.
There was a group of us that came up with the name Highlanders once he shot down the Dead Rabbits, because we were just thinking like, how funny would that be for like a polo to have like a dead rabbit on it, you know, and then people would be like, what the hell is this? But yeah, we were talking about like what would have kind of a rugby ethos, and we were thinking, you know, New Zealand, Scotland, Ireland, all these places. And there's the movie Highlander, obviously, but it was also, everybody was a big Braveheart fan at the time. People still are, I guess. But even though those guys technically were Lowland Scots, nobody really cares. So guy with kilt, fearsome Highlanders, so.
Sweet. What would you say, like...
And we love Robert, and he's Scottish, so that's not exactly why, but we do love him.
Nothing but respect for all of my coaches. Coach Joseph brought us all together. He's sacrificed a lot of time and put a lot of effort into North Carolina rugby, Chapel Hill rugby, and American rugby. And that's a great accomplishment, and we are all really happy to have had Robert Joseph in our lives.
So, I mean, right from the start, we recognised that, you know, we needed to build a coaching staff. It certainly wasn't something I wanted to do on my own. My experience of coaching in England, I worked with two other guys, and we worked together for 6 years. So I learned a lot from that. So Rob Futch was the other guy that helped me found the club back in 2003, and Rob was heavily involved in coaching early on. Then other people joined us. We had Zach Barker, Chuck's older brother, came along in the first year and got involved in coaching. And Jimmy Ivory was also one of our early coaches. And before Jimmy, then Jimmy moved up to Virginia Tech, and so he wasn't able to coach with us. So we've seen some turnover. The guy that came in at the end of the first season, I think that had a huge impact on the club, was Malcolm Dougal. Malcolm's Australian, grew up playing rugby. He been a phys ed teacher in school in Australia, played a high level himself and coached some pretty high level teams. And Malcolm brought elements of rugby league to the way the Highlanders played that are still with us. So one of our famous words that you'll hear in games, you'll hear it in practices, is the arrowhead. And so the arrowhead came from Malcolm. So it's a line of running, and it's a very effective line of running. So that's been central to our strategy from year one. We've always built our game around that, and Malcolm had a big influence on that. Malcolm coached with us, I guess, probably for maybe 5 or 6 years before he moved back to Australia.
Coach Mal taught me more about rugby than anybody's ever taught me. He taught me about playing the wing game. He taught me about playing a good touch rugby game. And he taught me about wrapping my ankle up well after some big hits.
So, I mean, and over the years we've had a lot of guys involved in coaching. We had Gavin Cook, and Gavin actually was our first under-15 coach, and he coached the guys like Jonathan Marshall, Willem Prince, Zach Stamper, Sebastian Torres, and others that then went on to be the nucleus of our 2010 team, which won our 5th state title. Gavin left us for a while and went back to England with his job, and then he came back again, so Gavin's back coaching again. And Gavin's a great coach. He's also very modest. He played rugby at a pretty high level for English schoolboys, but never really told us, and I think he played a bit of rugby in France as well. So he brings a lot to the coaching. Todd Faybeck has also been involved with the club from, I think, from season 2006. Thinking through, we've got some new guys involved now. Hugh Thomas is running our junior program, our under-15s and below. John Smith. John is a Kiwi. It was great having him and Malcolm coach together, because there was that New Zealand-Australia rivalry always there, and the little comments. Whenever there was an international game on, there was always a good amount of banter. And John was a forwards coach. He also played with some great rugby players in his younger days. Sean Fitzpatrick, the New Zealand captain, he played alongside him. And John brought what I'd call some old school rugby to the Highlanders. Very good forwards coach, particularly good in scrums, which is a really important part of the game. So yeah, it's a lot of fun memories of working with John.
I'm really thankful that I've had the opportunity to get to know Robert Futch, Malcolm, Todd, Gavin, Stephen Burr, all the guys that have helped coach the Highlanders over the years. And they're all really good guys, really great individuals, and they really look out for the team and for the individuals, the players, and we've built a great sense of community here. It's awesome. I love it.
And it all starts with the foundation. And my foundation that was laid here by Robert, Malcolm, Todd, Fayback, and like all of these guys, the list goes on. And if I'm forgetting somebody, they know I'm out there. I love them to death, But those guys just stand out to me because they were there, like nurturing me and molding me into the rugby player they wanted me to be and that I wanted to be. I was committed and they were as well.
Nationals was definitely the biggest achievement. We kind of steamrolled all the state competition, except unfortunately the state championship game we lost 3-0. We had a knock on it like 2 meters from the goal line at the very end of the game. But the crowning achievement, I would say, of my career was we beat a team from Louisiana. We were down 3-0. My friend Luciano got red carded, and it was a crazy moment because clock was ticking, hadn't been able to get anything together on offense, and we string together these crazy phases, mostly just running right off of 10, like a bunch of forwards. It was a rainy day. There was like standing water. It was crazy. Went down and tied it. So we thought maybe we could force overtime because it was a tournament, so they would play overtime. Then we like stole the ball in a ruck and just like phase. And then Matt Boone hit a penalty kick as time expired.
Right at the end of the game, and I distinctly remember getting ready to line up a penalty kick, and I could hear the referee's watch go off for full time, and I knew that, so I just lined up the kick and tried to kick it over, went right between the posts, and that was it. That was a great moment. I very much remember that.
And I remember seeing it on camera. In the moment, it was just too much emotion, crazy. I don't actually remember it very well in the moment, but looking back and seeing the film, and Robert Joseph gave like the funniest like little jump of joy when Matt Boone hit that kick. So that was probably the best moment for us.
When we made our kick that put us through to the South Finals, where we basically made sure that we were going to the Nationals, and we made the kick, Matt Boone made the kick, and there's tape of Matt Boone making the kick and then Robert Joseph doing this like jump in the air.
And I guess I was standing in between the cameraman and the kicker, and when Matt got the kick over, I think I leapt up in the air. I wouldn't call it a gibbly jump, but I vividly remember it. I can remember it like it was yesterday, and that was what won us the game. And in the end, that was what got us to Nationals, and we got our whole experience of going to Stanford and playing at Nationals from that. That was amazing in our second season to qualify for Nationals. And so we jumped on a plane to San Francisco and went down to Stanford University. That was something else. A great experience for the guys.
Yeah, and it was just really cool to be able to see, like, well, first of all, to play on these really nice pitches that were like super well manicured and like kept properly, but also just to see other teams who were playing at like a really high level.
Did score in Nationals, so that was kind of exciting.
How'd you do that?
John Beasley was on the wing, and he put up a chip kick to the back corner, and he was, in my year, we knew each other very well, so I knew what he was planning before he did it, and we both took off and chasing this kick. And their player goes to grab the ball, and John flies in and just destroys him, takes him completely out. And I just go in and, tap my hands on the ball, and there's the try. That was a fun one.
We played pretty well at Nationals, unfortunately didn't win a game. We were 0-3. We were really competitive in our first game and our last game, so that was quite a kind of reward for the season.
We won our first state title in 2006, and then we won it was 5 in a row, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. One of the things that we really started to get momentum, the finals in 6 and 7 were against the Lions. They were really close games, could have gone either way. So we had a relatively inexperienced team back then, but we did really well, and we had some great athletes. As we went on, what we started to see in 2008, we had a lot more players that were in their 4th year of playing rugby. Drew Zaber was a good example of that. Drew had played right from a freshman. He went to Nationals as a freshman in 2005. Great, so he got all that experience behind him, and we really started to see it pay off. So in the state final in 2008, we played the Lions again. I think we put over 50 points on them in the state final. So that was a mark of how we'd grown, and there was no one could touch us back then. Uh, 2009 probably was our best season. We won the state championship. We actually played for 2 separate state championships. We played in the multi-high school and we beat Vance Cabarrus in a really tight game. And then the week after we played Charlotte Catholic, who were in the single high school division, and we beat them too.
We played against Charlotte Catholic after both of us had gone to Nationals. They with the single high school, I was with the club, and they kind of still thought they were the best team in North Carolina. And we were able, as a team, to run up a pretty convincing, I think it was like 31-5 or something like that. So that was a great opportunity. That was probably my favorite.
It was like the second state final, because we had one with the club team, Vance Cabarrus, won that, and then we did one against the high school, which was Catholic, Charlotte Catholic High School. we won both, but at the end of the Catholic final, they announced there was an MVP. And I hadn't scored. I mean, I had played well, but hadn't really done much, I had thought. And I thought a senior would be getting it. And then they said my name, and I was just shocked. To me, I felt good.
We then went on to regionals, and we won regionals down in Tennessee at Murfreesboro, and then that took us to nationals. Nationals, we went up to Pittsburgh. We played one of the best teams in the country, Highland from Salt Lake City. Scored 2 tries on them. No one else scored a try on them all season, and that was a great feeling. We beat a team called Union from New Jersey, and so we come back with a 1-2 record from nationals.
End of my senior season when we went to nationals was a little bit bittersweet because I actually I broke my foot playing in South, which really kept me out of the postseason, disappointingly. But if we're talking about the Highlanders, I think the biggest game to me was playing Jesuit the year before. And we didn't get the result we wanted. We lost a game, but we really put it all out there, and it was a great game to play.
The most spectacular thing with Highlanders, I would say, even though we did lose the game, was playing against Highland and actually scoring the most points out of anyone else at the national tournament.
So that was a pretty amazing year. We played, I think, 25 games of rugby that year. And that year we were able to field an A and a B side in our league. So our A side actually played the B side that year, and the B side played all the other teams in the league and did really well. And it was having a big squad like that and having guys that had been playing for 4 years that really helped. So our team in 2009 was really experienced. The guys that were seniors, most of them had played since freshman year. The guys that were juniors actually also had 4 years of rugby, a lot of them, because they started playing when they were in middle school. And so that really helped us through, and it created a really strong team. So the touring experience is always great, but that's one of the things that when you asked earlier about what brings the club together and bonds it together, the touring part is a really important part of it. The kids staying in 4 in a room together, they get to know each other pretty well.
Oh man, all the hotel trips, all the tournaments we had were just so much fun. Like all the guys were really down to earth and everything. Like it was a great culture. Like it still is.
Yeah. The funniest moments were, I think, just the bus rides down to Tennessee and up to Pittsburgh for South and Nationals. I think that's where the best moments I remember.
But on the way back from Nationals, Jim and I, who are arguably the best singers on the team, were arguably had to compete for #1 best singer on the team. And Robert had us go through La Marseillaise and Rose of Scotland and all sorts of stuff. And I think I won, if I remember correctly. But one of the stories, it was a great team building experience, and there are a lot of other really great memories from the Highlanders.
In sunshine or in shadow, oh tiny boy, oh. I don't know. Oh, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. You made thee mighty, made thee mighty, yeah. Take me home to the place I love, West Virginia.
I think it was 2009 when we were heading to Tennessee, to Murfreesboro, to play in the South Region Finals, which we won. And we were driving through the mountains of North Carolina into Tennessee, and I'm sure you know that road. It's very windy and it's very steep. And John Smith, our coach from New Zealand, he's a real old school rugby player, and he believes in fitness and core fitness. And one of John's favourite things is the plank. He likes to get the kids to do the plank. So he had them doing planks on the bus as it was winding through these hills, going down hills, up hills, round corners. And planking is hard enough as it is, but doing it on the bus was it was a hilarious sight to see. And actually we carried that through that same year when we went on tour to England. It was Graham's senior year, so it seemed like a really good idea. So I think in the summer before, so in summer of 2008, I thought this is a great idea, and I started talking to people about it. And you know, not all good ideas get legs and run. And suddenly we were in the fall, it was October, and one of the parents, Jim Sorgi, came up to me and said, "What's happening about the tour?" And I said, "Look, I've got too much going on at work, and you know, with everything else, I don't think we can do it." And he also went away and talked to some of the other parents, and you know, the next minute we were going to England. So the parents really took control of it, which actually is one of the really important things I've learned about running the club. And people told me this early on, you need to get parents involved. So the parents got involved, Jim Sorgi, I can't remember everyone else, Zach Stamper's mum was involved, Willem Prin's mum was involved, and they just put the whole thing together. It was, you know, an unbelievable tour. We were busy every day. We played 3 great games of rugby, toured London, toured Twickenham, went to Bath, went to see USA under-18s play over in Bath as well. They happened to be there on tour at the same time. So no, but it was the parents that really made it happen. It was my idea, but the parents made it happen, and you know, it was great to actually for Graham to go back and actually be able to play against some of the guys that he was playing with back in Bracknell, you know, 10 years earlier.
The last thing I want to talk about it is the tour in England, because I think it was, as a parent, it was the highlight. It was great fun to go. I had the pleasure of being one of the chaperones, and just want to share one image with you, and that is of Robert leading the crowd of rugby players to wherever we were going. And we had parents who had organized a lot of things. We did a lot of activities, played 3 games while we were there, had a wonderful time. All the boys who were older than 18 drank beer, but just envision Robert leading the crowd, and then Carlos and myself sort of on the back ends of the crowd, just sort of keeping the herd together to make sure that all of us got to wherever it was that Robert was leading us. And it was great fun, and we finished off. It was the last night when the debutante party was in the hotel.
I know nothing about that.
Well, it just, you know, things were pretty much under control until all these lovely young women showed up for this party, and everything broke loose. But we'll let the boys tell you about that.
We also went to England my senior year for spring break, and that was probably the most fun moment we had. We had a great group of guys with Michael Puglisi, Sebastian Werner, some really hilarious guys, and we had the opportunity just to kind of relax and hang out together as a group for 10 days straight, and we got up to a lot of fun opportunities in England.
So when we took our trip to England, me and Matt Daniels were staying. We somehow got a room upgrade. We had a really nice room. We had like food in our room, but one time we had all the captains in our room. We were watching a soccer game on TV, and actually no, we weren't watching a soccer game. We were fighting. That was okay. We were fighting in the room, and we managed to collapse one of the beds. It just completely collapsed. It was like on the ground, and we spent like a couple hours trying to fix it, and then eventually everyone in the room left except for me and Matt, and so we had to walk embarrassingly up to the front desk and say that we'd broken the bed while watching a soccer game because it was too exciting.
We went to England and played 3 games against English teams, and after that we won regionals and went to nationals. And I think it was at England that we clicked and figured out how to play.
every time we go anywhere on trips, you know, the hotels, the bus rides, singing. It was, I mean, and just all the people I know from the team, you know, now I just hang out with them, I see them, and it's just, there's nothing quite like, you know, another rugby player. You know, I always feel comfortable when I see them. It's nice. Yeah. It's camaraderie. You know, like Shakespeare said, he who sheds his blood with me shall be my brother.
I think those sports where you really, you know, you're bleeding for your team. Like, I walk off a rugby field and I'm hurt, you know, like regardless of injuries. And I think that kind of bonds you in brotherhood together, that you really are putting your body out on the line for other people just so that you as a team can succeed. And you don't necessarily get that in some of the I guess, softer sports. So I think rugby really does bond people together. And it takes a team to win. You can't just have a good quarterback in rugby and you win. You have to have a full team. So I think that's a big part of it.
Well, the camaraderie is always good. Like, you can't not be friends with anyone on the team. You gotta love everyone because, well, they've got your back in everything. And like after the games, we always eat with the other team and hang out and talk. And I've never done that with another sport, and that was always fun for me.
But I think the sport teaches you, one, like most sports, but this sport teaches you team, camaraderie, discipline, structure, and just gives you a good understanding of what physical contact is. You know, I think it's a sport that really does that. And then it has that thing that nobody can really explain and put in words, which is the bonds that are forged in that sport. You know, so coming from somebody that's played other sports, my bond will always be stronger with rugby compared to any other sport that I've played. I will always give my shirt for my rugby mate, you know, without any hesitation. And I can't explain why that is. You know, it's just something that occurs when the whistle blows. And from then on out, we're brothers. You know, we might as well eat at the same table, you know, or share the same bed. You know what I mean? Because he's my brother, you know, for life. And I can't say that about any other sport. So it's definitely changed. It's definitely changes your relationships and your dynamic with your teammates. I will go to war with my brothers from the Highlanders.
This is probably one of the biggest things that I really enjoy about rugby, and I think I learned this from Robert Joseph, is that he tried to engender a really positive sense of community, and he tried to reinforce things in a positive manner. So when you did things right and you did things well, he made sure to compliment you on them so that way you would retain them, that way you'd put those things into practice on your own. And I mean, that's another life skill, you know? Positive reinforcement for people to help people become better at who they are and what they're doing. And I try to put that into practice with what I do with the U19s and with any of my friends or anybody who wants to play the game.
Teamwork is a huge part of it. It's a team sport, and I think working in teams is a life skill that you're giving them an early start at seeing how important it is to be part of a team and bringing your individual contribution to a bigger team contribution. And I see that in my work life. So I think teamwork is huge, discipline and respect, and actually when you talk to parents about that really hits home with them. And you know, bringing up teenage boys is tough. I've done it twice. Kids need, I think teenage boys need an outlet. They need something to, academics are really important, but they need to be doing something physical, and I think rugby gives them it. But the teamwork and discipline is really important, I think it separates and differentiates rugby from some other sports.
You've got a little something for everyone. I mean, I'm probably just repeating what Coach is saying, but there's a position for everyone. If you're a big guy, you've got a big spot. If you're a little guy, we've got a perfect spot for you. If you can pass, you've got a spot. If you can't pass and you can run the ball, I mean, there's just all sorts of limitless things you can do that are really cool. And it's not all just hitting people and beating each other up. So it's like Coach Todd said, you got intensity of short bursts of football extended over the long period of a soccer game, thrown in with the passing of basketball and some other stuff. So it's a little bit of everything. I like it.
So they said less politics are involved. They said the best man plays on the rugby pitch. He says you could be your first day, your second day, if you know the basics and you're better than the guy that's been playing for 5 years, guess what? You're gonna play him here. And that right there sold me off the gate. I was like, I'm out of here. But rugby helped me out into 2006. And then when I came in for football 2006, the coach, he had to throw his politics out the window. He said, this kid's better. Rugby got him tough. That's what he said.
of the things that was really important for us was to somehow keep our alumni connected. Facebook has helped with that because we've got an alumni group, and I think we've got about 120 or 130 former players on that group. We actually have a directory of everybody that's played for the club. I think it's on the website. We've tried to keep that up to date. It probably needs an update now. And the key thing with trying to keep the alumni together was actually to start the alumni games. And I can't remember what year we started. It was probably 2009 or around then. We had our first alumni game. And I got that idea from one of the other really established clubs in the country, Gonzaga High School. They have we stole a few ideas from Gonzaga, great club run by a great guy, Lee Kelly, and we got our yearbook idea from them. But our yearbook was even better. And then we've taken the alumni game idea from them, and that, you know, we try and hold that the week after the last game of the season, so usually around the end of May, and that's been really good. The other one, again in the same vein, is the Thanksgiving touch rugby. We try and play, and we also try and do a touch rugby thing around Christmas or New Year. So those are all opportunities for the alumni to come back, to meet each other, to play, and to have a good laugh. And I think it's working really well. I think it's another really strong aspect to the club.
From the Highlanders, guys that played after me when I would come back to alumni games, and these kids wouldn't even know who I was, you know? I would look at them and be like, man, were we that little? Or man, were we that big? Because I don't know what these kids are eating, man, but I've been to a couple of games and been like, man, I don't think I could have played with those guys when I was that old. But I don't know, man. I love those guys, man. And then I'll say my name and then they'll know. You know, so the coaching staff, Robert especially, does a really good job at keeping us together. You know, things like the alumni, the 10-year reunion, you know, things like that. I appreciate Robert. I love Robert so much for doing those things, because there's a lot of teams that don't, you know, especially in rugby, you know, that just don't keep it together, don't have that like cohesiveness and doesn't have that organization. And Robert has always brought that to the table. That's why I learned so much through this sport here. I'm glad this was my home, because I would have had a totally different rugby experience anywhere else in the U.S.
Well, there was all these guys that wanted to continue their rugby career, and there was no outlet for them. So when I heard the first talk of the Warriors, the club forming that became the Warriors, I was really excited. And you know, we've tried to, you know, give support in whatever way we can. So we share facilities, we share equipment. You know, we've offered help in a number of different ways, and you know, it's really important for me that the Warriors are successful.
Or former Highlanders, guys that learned the game in high school, have stuck with it and wanted to come back home to where they came, you know, where they started playing the game, and start a men's team and start an extension of the Highlanders at the adult level, which is incredible. It's a lot of fun.
After high school, I took a long break from rugby during college, and in the last couple of years, I guess the Highlanders really helped me when I went back to coach the under-15 teams. And it made me realize that I wanted to play again. And so now we have started a men's club in Chapel Hill called the Chapel Hill Warriors. So I am back playing again just completed my first full year.
How was that?
It was a roller coaster, emotionally and physically.
So I think the Warriors has made a big change to that, and you know, the connection between the club, you know, all the way from the 7-year-olds that are coming to our camp, all the way through to guys on the Warriors like Teddy, who's been involved with rugby for a very long time in the local community, and the fact that we've got so many Highlanders alumni playing for the Warriors. There's really a common thread running through all of it, and that's really nice to see. And I think we just need to build that.
This is Jersey. First of all, big thanks to Todd and Robert for putting this together. It's a great accomplishment. Very proud to be a part of it. Glad to see all of you guys back in town and celebrating and playing touch and all that stuff. I mean, it's huge. It's a huge accomplishment. I mean, we just started the Chapel Hill Warriors this year, and just thinking if we could do the same thing 10 years from now, I can't even imagine it. So this is a great accomplishment. We should all be very proud, especially these two, for putting this all together, putting the team together, and for all the work that they've put in over the years. And I just want to say I'm very proud to be a part of this team, part of this family, I would say, this culture, and cheers.
And before Chris gets a chance to talk, look what he's wearing. Can you guys see that? Talk about it, Chris.
Well, first off, thanks to George for also being here, so I'm not the oldest former player. But secondly, this is first 15, which when I was 16 didn't really mean anything to me at all, other than this just free jersey that was given out in practice. However, now, I mean, there was a point when there was 50 Highlanders playing all at once. And, I hope we can get back to that point again. But this means something to those people that are, long into the future. And I still have this, and there's people who even were in the first 15 who don't have this. And I've just had this around. As you can see in this light, it's kind of just tan colored because I just wear the crap out of it. Throughout college, now I show up at all practices or rugby things. I'll wear this at some point or other. So it's not something I'm going to put into a trophy case, but it's something that is going to stick with me for a really long time, and it's going to have holes in it at some point, and I'm still going to keep it to me, that thing that stays in my drawer. So it means a lot to be one of the first people in this now organization, and I've seen just firsthand how this team has kind of invaded Chapel Hill.
I know most of the folks in the room. We've only been here 3 years. Amanda, my wife, and I came to North Carolina 3 years ago from San Diego. And we were very fortunate to find the Highlanders. The Highlanders, as such, made a huge difference to our ability to kind of acclimate to Chapel Hill and North Carolina really quickly. As you all know, rugby has a very special ability to kind of create a social network, and it's very easy to make friends when you have your son involved in rugby. Alex joined the club 3 years ago when he came here, and he did pretty good. And like most of the young men who've been through the Highlanders Club, he really benefited from great coaching from Todd and Robert and Steve and all the other coaches. And so we're really just so thankful that we were able to find the Highlanders and enjoy what the Highlanders has brought both us and Alex. So thanks.
When I was a freshman starting in high school, my parents told me I had to play a sport because I was a really lazy kid. And so I decided to play rugby because they only practiced twice a week. My older brother played rugby too, so. And it transformed kind of, it sounds corny, but it really changed who I was. It gave me a lot of opportunities that I didn't have. And I think a lot of that, I played on a lot of teams over time. And I think what really makes the difference, what makes this club special is Coach Joseph, Todd, all the other coaches over the years. They really make a team that, it's been the best team that I've ever played on. You know, I learned more playing for these guys than I did for any of the other whatever teams I've ever been on. And I think they deserve all the credit for really building such a great program.
So we've been characterised by really good parental support, and there's lots of other parents here. Mike Humphries, who sat on the board over recent years, and people that have washed jerseys. So it's been, I think actually Rob Futch, it may have been Rob Futch, but somebody told me earlier on, the way to get the club to work is to get parents involved, not to try and do it all yourself. And I think that's been one of the things that's been really good. So for those of you that aren't a parent, i.e. players or former players, give a big, big hand to the people that have supported the club over the years, please.
After a year or two, I decided I'd help out, and I made the mistake of saying, "Sure, Robert, I'll help arrange the fields." Everyone's laughing because we went through a very, very difficult time trying to find fields, but today, or soon to be, there's going to be a turfed field with regulation rugby goalposts on that right at Cedar Falls Park, and I think it's an indication of how the city has, and the Parks and Recs have adopted rugby and the perseverance of Robert and others to make that happen. So they'll have a field that's better than the fields that the UNC rugby teams play on.
Gosh, man, just take a look at it, man. I mean, it's beautiful, like turf is the future of fields now, and before this turf was here, back in the day when I was here, it was grass with dust patches. It was like a bad military haircut if I had to compare it to anything. To see it in the condition that it is in now, it just speaks a lot for the community, and it speaks a lot for this sport that we have a field now that stands permanently year round, with official posts. Back in the day we had to dig holes, and put PCP pipe up, and it would, if the wind blew heavy, then we would have to catch it. Or it would just fall. We would have one post, and we just, imagine, So that's, coming from that to this, that just shows the dedication that the Highlanders staff, community, family, have put into this. That happened because of the people's hard work, from the players to the parents, to the coaches, to the sponsors, So I thank them. I thank everybody that's been a part of it. Whether it's a big part or a small part, thank you.
We've had an ambition for a number of years to have our own facility, and Cedar Falls is fantastic. It's a great practice facility because it's all weather. It's actually a really good field to play on as well. The guys like playing on it. But it would be really nice to have a proper rugby community built around a field and a clubhouse. And so that's a long-term ambition. It would take a lot of time, effort, and particularly money to do it, but we've seen other people do it successfully. So I think that remains, the board of directors, that remains a long-term strategic goal. And the idea of having, as I said, a clubhouse, which would be a focal point for our rugby community. It's maybe a pipe dream at the moment, but you have to kind of think into the future and figure out what would make it possible. So that would be something I'd love to see.